I'm Lynn Packer with OUR Video Op-Ed, Part 16, Utah's System of Injustice, the Michael Drury Story. It's what happens when corruption and incompetence infest Utah's OAG, Office of the Attorney General. Justice vanishes. Full disclosure, I'm a consultant and investigator for the defendant in the 2018 criminal case, State v. Michael Drury. I was not paid to produce this report. All opinions are my own based on facts entered into Utah's 3rd District Court public records. My intent is to draw attention to corrupt practices in the Utah Attorney General's office and in the Summit County Attorney's office. Michael Drury is a graduate of the University of Utah Business School. He's president of United Mergers and Acquisitions. He's a former owner of the Big Shot Ranch outdoor gun range in Grantsville. He's a former fundraiser and campaign committee member for Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes. He's past president of the Salt Lake and Utah Attorney General Honorary Colonels organizations. They have the acronyms SLHC and AGHC. And he's a criminal defendant charged with stealing from the SLHC and AGHC organizations and breaching his fiduciary duty to those organizations. Drury faces 2 criminal charges divided into 5 counts: breach of fiduciary duty owed to the 2 nonprofit honorary colonel organizations, and theft of property, stealing a Bearcat armored vehicle, once on loan to Salt Lake County Unified Police Department and used at political fundraisers for former Sheriff Jim Winder and Attorney General Sean Reyes. The criminal charging document says the property stolen is a firearm or an operable motor vehicle. It must mean motor vehicle because it identifies the Bearcat. It also claims Drury was armed with a dangerous weapon. Prosecutors, however, have never provided a single bit of evidence that the alleged theft was an armed robbery. It's a rather bizarre, unproven charge. The Attorney General Office's case against Drury is riddled with blunders, which include, among many others, besides the armed robbery claim, charging Drury with stealing his own property, falsifying and withholding evidence against Drury, using perjured testimony, that is, relying on witnesses who lie, and abusing authority and power. I'm going to list the blunders one by one. It's a really long list. First on that long list, at its very foundation, the Utah Attorney General's case is fatally flawed. A huge blunder because the defendant, Michael Drury, is accused of stealing his own property. The charging document claims he stole property of another person and breached his fiduciary duty to that property entrusted to him, ostensibly the Bearcat. But neither honorary colonel group ever owned the Bearcat. The Bearcat armored vehicle was never owned by or titled to or in the possession of either honorary colonel organization. It was a vehicle leased by and titled to Big Shot Ranch, then co-owned by defendant Michael Drury. Summarizing, neither honorary colonel group ever had title to or possession of the Bearcat. A supposed theft victim cannot be deprived of something he, she, or it never owned or possessed. The defendant provided the court proof of Bearcat ownership, but the prosecutor still sticks with the charge. I refer to the armored vehicle as the pesky Bearcat because it pops up so often in so many ways in the Michael Drury story. It made the news several times before, during, and after its tie to the AG's criminal case. In 2014, it became an issue in the Salt Lake County Sheriff's campaign. The headline read, UPD loses use of Bearcat. Sheriff candidates blame politics.
The Unified Police Department SWAT team no longer has access to a $300,000 armored truck and politics is to blame.
Though Salt Lake County's Bearcat was actually owned by a businessman named Mike Drury.
My perception is that my opponent chose to use that piece of equipment as a political football.
In 2018, the Bearcat was sold to the Utah Gun Exchange. The new owner made news using it as a prop in a nationwide counter-protest against Parkland High School students campaigning for stricter gun laws. It was the subject of a Salt Lake Tribune editorial cartoon.
Parkland school shooting survivors are traveling around the country this summer on a 20-state bus tour to call attention to gun violence and demand gun control legislation. And they're now being tailed by some unlikely and unwanted groupies. Gun rights activists following them from stop to stop and holding protests of their own.
These are our tools of free speech. A reporter would use a microphone. In our case, we use a Bearcat and a replica firearm.
The Bearcat made frequent appearances at Drury's Big Shot Ranch for campaign fundraising events for former Salt Lake County Sheriff Jim Winder, and after that for Attorney General Sean Reyes. One of the incentives to donate, firing a minigun on top of the vehicle.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Well-heeled donors, especially gun enthusiasts, were attracted to the fundraisers with slick invitations that included a menu of available weapons they could fire during the events. Both Sheriff Jim Winder and Attorney General Sean Reyes fundraisers were called pumpkin blow-ups because one of the high-powered rifle attractions involved blowing up giant pumpkins. I'll play 2 video clips where, in the first, you'll see Michael Drury signaling that the range is hot just before Sheriff Winder blows up a pumpkin. The second clip shows Sean Reyes at one of his 4 Big Shot Ranch fundraisers doing the honors.
So let's got all the cameras on. Going hot. Okay, here we go, boys.
Pumpkin pie for a year.
Okay, Sean, take a deep breath. Breathe out.
No, it keeps. I can't see anything. It just keeps kind of floating. Take those glasses
Well,
off.
it's the size of a Volkswagen Bug. There you go.
Aiming lower left,
Okay.
below that.
Okay, all right. So where you
There you go.
Right, first shot, it's even lower.
In all, Drury hosted 4 annual fundraisers for Sean Reyes in 2014, 2015, 2016, and 2017. Reyes, whose AGO brought criminal charges against Drury, was very familiar with the armored vehicle Drury allegedly stole. It was there at Big Shot Ranch year after year for the 4 years Reyes held fundraisers there. The first year, he asked Drury to park it out of sight because the Jim Winder Bearcat election controversy was still smoldering. The next 3 years, the Bearcat was front and center at Reyes fundraisers. The Reyes campaign was supposed to count the cost of staging the fundraisers as in-kind donations, that is, donations that are not cash. Those included the cost of the Bearcat, as evidenced by this email from Michael Drury to Mike Deaver, Reyes' campaign finance chairman, and to Reyes. Drury wrote, "Sean and Mike, I'm glad everyone has a great time. We had a lot of fun as well. I think the in-kind amount should be around $12,500. That includes a lot of prep for the event, the pumpkins, food, clubhouse, Bearcat, labor, and ammo. Let me know what else you may need to support that. Mike." The AGO's Drury investigation was so inept it failed to discover that the Attorney General himself, Sean Reyes, had violated campaign finance reporting law. The Reyes campaign vastly understated Drury's in-kind donations. The in-kind donations for the 4 Big Shot Ranch fundraisers held for Sean Reyes were falsely reported to the Lieutenant Governor's office. In 2014, no money was reported. It was actually over $15,000. The next year, $12,500 reported. It was really over $20,000. In 2016, 0 reported. That was over $20,000. And in 2017, $12,000 was reported, but the cost exceeded $30,000. Number 3 is a whopper blunder, and I'm not making this up. Part of the money Reyes's AGO alleges Drury stole did not end up in Drury's pocket, but in Reyes's political campaign coffers. Among checks like this one that prosecutors claim Drury put to his own use, according to the criminal charges against him, is one for $6,043. This part of the alleged theft is one of the many facts that not only show how incompetent the AG's investigation was, but also shows that the AG's own illegal conduct was overlooked and covered up. The money prosecutors say was stolen actually paid for ammunition at Sean Reyes's November 11, 2016 Big Shot Ranch fundraiser, including ammo for the Bearcat minigun. The money benefited the Reyes campaign, not Drury personally. Salt Lake Honorary Colonel members who donated money for the ammo wanted a tax deduction, so they paid to the SLHC nonprofit rather than directly to the Reyes campaign. The illegal tax-deductible donations were essentially laundered through SLHC, and Reyes's campaign finance people would have known about it. AG case Blunder 4, campaign-related conflicts of interest. Michael Drury had multiple connections to Sean Reyes campaigns. He attended a 2012 campaign event and donated money. In 2016, he served on AG Reyes's campaign finance committee. He hosted the 4 Reyes fundraisers at Big Shot Ranch that we've been talking about. In mid-December 2017, he began serving on Sean Reyes's 2017 steering committee. That was in preparation for the 2020 governor's race. But in mid-February 2018, while Drury was still on Reyes's election committee, Reyes's office began a secret criminal investigation into Drury, including into the Attorney General honorary colonels. These conflicts of interest are so glaring and so extreme that the Attorney General's office should have never begun any investigation. Any person who brought a complaint to the Attorney General's office should have been immediately directed to a county or federal prosecutor. Besides campaign-related conflicts of interest, there are also conflicts in connection with the formation and operation of the Attorney General's Honorary Colonel Program. I've been talking about honorary colonel groups. What are they exactly? Well, they're groups of civic-minded business people who pool their energies and money to support law enforcement agencies. They provide equipment, scholarships, host awards, banquets, and support fallen officers' families. In Utah, there's the Salt Lake Sheriff and Unified PD group. West Valley Police has one. So does the Utah County Sheriffs and the National Guard. One of the examples, the National Guard's Honorary Colonels Corps of Utah. It was formed in 1958. The membership is made up of individuals who normally are CEOs or their equivalent. It has had board members like Paul Warner, a former Assistant Utah Attorney General and United States Attorney, and Jake Garn, a former Salt Lake Mayor and Utah Senator. Former Utah Attorney General Chief Civil Deputy Brian Tarbert is a former commander of the organization. The Salt Lake Honorary Colonels organization has also been around a long time. Like most similar organizations, it provides badges for its members. The AG Honorary Colonels was established in the summer of 2017. One of the first orders of business was for the AG's office to create this badge design, which, by the way, possibly makes illegal use of the state seal. Here are some of the key players in the founding and early operation of the Attorney General honorary colonels. Of course, Sean Reyes is the main player. Nate Mutter was assigned to design the badge. Aaron Jones vetted applicants doing criminal background checks, and Leo Lucy directed Aaron Jones' vetting. Reyes's campaign manager, Alan Crooks, was involved from the campaign standpoint. This is an application for AGHC membership. An applicant would agree to appoint any authorized representative designated by the Office of the Attorney General as an authorized agent for me for the purpose of inspecting any arrest records information maintained by any law enforcement agency concerning me. The Office of the Attorney General may provide a badge and membership identification with members' picture signifying membership in the Utah Honorary Colonels. The badge and identification are the property of the Office of the Attorney General and may be recalled for any reason deemed sufficient by the Attorney General. As I said, Attorney General investigator Aaron Jones was assigned to do criminal background checks on applicants. This is one of the emails he sent Drury. Mike, I am the executive officer for the investigation division of the Utah Attorney General's office. I was asked to conduct the basic background checks on you and others that had put in to be a part of the Attorney General's honorary colonel program. Chief Leo Lucy asked that I inform you that these have been completed and there were no concerns. The AGHC nonprofit was primarily established to benefit the Reyes campaign, according to Michael Drury. He said the Attorney General's liaisons, Leo Lucy and Nate Mutter, said, do whatever is necessary to raise money to support us. Alan Crooks, campaign manager, agreed to move forward to accept our support. Then all of a sudden, shit hits the fan. In February 2018, a newspaper headline triggered events that quickly led to a criminal investigation into Michael Drury, where Reyes throws Drury under the bus, and to the immediate and complete demolition of the newly organized Attorney General honorary colonels. Drury and the AG honorary colonels had suddenly become significant political liabilities for Sean Reyes. This was the blaring Deseret News headline. AG fundraising during Utah legislative session targeted. The story said Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes plans to hold his annual campaign fundraiser at the posh Deer Valley Resort on the first weekend of March. But under a bill filed Monday, prospective donors would be prohibited from contributing to the Attorney General and other elected officials. We don't want the Capitol to be a place where people come up and raise funds, especially when we're in session and doing the people's work, said Representative Mark Wheatley, Democrat of Murray, sponsor of House Bill 320. The story went on to say, Senate President Wayne Niederhauser said the Attorney General should be subject to the same restrictions on fundraising as legislators and the governor. The Senate leader shook his head when shown a copy of Reyes's fundraising invitation and suggested Reyes should know better. While Drury was still on Sean Reyes's election committee, and while he was still helping set up the AG honorary colonels, he came under a secret criminal investigation. The date, February 14, 2018. On the very same day, Valentine's Day 2018, the AGO began fully dismantling its honorary colonels program without telling Drury. 2 targets the same day, Drury and the AGHC. An Attorney General honorary colonel fundraiser scheduled the next day, canceled. On February 14th, Nate Mutter, Drury's liaison with the AGO, emailed Drury's assistant, Nick Singleton, and told him, Sean cannot participate in the event tomorrow, and requested that we cancel the event. That same day, Mutter helped kick off the AG's secret Michael Drury probe. That's right, Nate Mutter, the same one in charge of AGHC badges, also began investigating Drury. That morning, Mutter was involved in conducting the first of 4 interviews with SLHC's Joel France, Cloyd Bell, Bill Williams, and Swen Mortensen. During those interviews, Reyes's investigators told witnesses that the initial fundraising dinner for the AG honorary colonels in support of Sean Reyes the very next day would be canceled and the organization would be terminated. Mortensen asked Mutter a question during his interview. Mortensen asked, "Does Sean have any idea what's going on?" Mutter began to reply, "Well," and then Mortensen interrupted, "He does." Then they all laugh, and Mortensen says, "I'd be very leery endorsing this." He goes on to say, if this hits the news, and it's probably going to hit the news, they're supposed to have a AG Colonels thing tomorrow. And they're supposed to have a luncheon at the Salt Lake Country Club next Wednesday. Then Mutter says, "Well, just so you're aware, recently there's been a lot of attention to House Bill 320, which is simply saying the Attorney General, the Governor, and some other offices, they're barred from doing any kind of fundraising during the session." He goes on to say, because of that, our office, the Honorary Colonels AG program, none of that is supposed to be represented in tomorrow's dinner. Mortensen asked, "Has that bill passed?" Mutter, "It has not, but it is probably going to pass." Mortensen, "That means there will not be an AG Colonels?" Mutter, "We just don't want to feed any fuel to the fire, because some of the recent issues surrounding we cannot be associated with tomorrow's dinner." Mortensen, "So Sean won't be there?" Mutter, "I would say no." The AGO's top Drury investigator is Aaron Jones, who began investigating the same AGHC organization that he helped set up, and is investigating Drury, who is his main honorary colonel's contact. Jones may have unlawfully used a restricted government database, such as the FBI's NCIS system, to do criminal background checks on honorary colonel applicants. Prosecutors will neither confirm nor deny. He is the investigator who missed facts that some of the alleged stolen money ended up in the Reyes campaign and that the SLHC may have been used to launder illegal contributions into the Reyes campaign. Besides the Drury investigation that Jones is botching, he bungled 2 previous high-profile probes. In 2017, charges against the San Juan County Sheriff and his deputy were dismissed after Jones testified at their preliminary hearing. The judge found the evidence Jones collected wholly lacking. County Commissioner said the sheriff experienced stress and irreparable damage under the flawed decisions and political games of the Attorney General's office. In 2013, charges against Springdale's town manager and police chief were dismissed after Jones testified at their preliminary hearing. The judge found no evidence to support the criminal charges. One resident complained that the 2 had been railroaded by the Attorney General's office. After the AG's secret investigation began, a fire destroyed the office clubhouse at Drury's Big Shot Ranch shooting range. Investigators concluded it was arson, causing about $400,000 damage. AGO agent Jones saw a story about the fire on the news and decided to investigate. In his report for the Drury prosecution, Aaron Jones wrote, "I contacted Special Agent Jim Malpede by phone on March 22nd and asked him about the Big Shot Ranch fire. Malpede informed me that they had an investigation into Mike Drury, and I informed him that the Attorney General's office had an active investigation into Drury. Malpede asked if the FBI and the Attorney General's office could work together on the case regarding Drury. On Monday, March 26th, Chief Leo Lucy informed me that our office will work with the FBI regarding the matter." The Big Shot Ranch arson fire is yet another Aaron Jones investigation flub. No one was ever arrested or charged. There were so many errors made with the investigation, it may take another report to detail them all. At one point, the Tooele County Sheriff's Office, also investigating, closed the case. But there's breaking news. In November this year, the Tooele County Attorney's Office reopened the BSR arson investigation. I predict that one will also fail. Besides Reyes campaign conflicts, there are also additional conflicts of interest in connection with the Drury prosecution. Abuse of power and political conflicts of interest extend to Salt Lake County Sheriff Rosie Rivera in concert with her close ally, Mike Gunn. Let me set the stage for Sheriff Rivera's appearance in this saga. Rosie Rivera was seeking re-election as Salt Lake County Sheriff, running against Republican Justin Hoyle. Michael Drury publicly backed her opponent. Drury's Salt Lake honorary colonel rival, John Cameron, who wanted to replace Drury as president, supported Rivera. Mike Gunn, who was aiding the AG's office investigation against Drury, was a staunch Rivera supporter. Jim Winder, who Drury had supported for years, publicly criticized Rivera. As reported by the Salt Lake Tribune, as the sheriff's campaign was underway, ex-Sheriff Jim Winder blasted his successor for lack of leadership in jumping in to stop the hemorrhage of cities from the Unified Police Department. A strong sheriff needs to fight to keep the consolidated law enforcement agency together, said Winder, warning of diminished public safety and higher costs if it unravels. Rivera and Drury were well acquainted through Salt Lake honorary colonels. Rivera, seen here speaking at an honorary colonel's event, had long known Drury, on the left, who emceed that Christmas party, and many others. After Reyes threw his former political ally under the bus, Rosie Rivera was more than happy to drive the bus and mow down her political adversary. Her conflict of interest is off the charts. Rivera assigned one of her investigators, Darren Paul, to assist the AGO Drury investigation despite her conflict of interest. She helped arrange for her political ally, Mike Gunn, to be a witness in the Attorney General's Drury probe. Gunn became the only witness to allege, without proof, Drury had stolen from the two colonel organizations. She directly helped facilitate Drury's first arrest after the investigation ended in September 2018 and helped assure he would be jailed in another county without bail and thrown in the hole. Mike Gunn became Rivera's right-hand man in her efforts to get revenge for Drury's support of her opponent and in support of Drury's rival to take over Salt Lake honorary colonels. So who is Mike Gunn as the only witness to allege Drury committed theft? He's a former Drury business associate with Metro Security Incorporated. The two had a falling out after Drury accused Gunn of embezzling money from Metro Security. Gunn has filed for bankruptcy 3 times. He owed about $500,000 to the Internal Revenue Service and owed over $100,000 to the Utah State Tax Commission. Gunn owes Drury $312,000 for a business loan, plus several other financial obligations Gunn has with Drury. Mike Gunn injected himself into the Big Shot Ranch arson investigation. He secretly hid tracking devices on Michael Drury's vehicles and began following them. Gunn shared the tracking information and dozens of emails to arson investigators over several months. His work on the arson investigation segued into his working with the Attorney General's office on its Michael Drury case. It was in one of Gunn's dozens of emails to arson investigators on June 24, 2018, that he disclosed his contact with Sheriff Rosie Rivera, which led to her referring him as a witness in the AGO investigation. He wrote, "I was also told by Sheriff Rivera on Friday that the Attorney General's office is investigating Mike Drury, referring me to Special Agent Aaron Jones. A few days later, Gunn met with two AGO investigators, Darren Paul, who Sheriff Rivera had assigned to the case, and Aaron Jones. It was during that interview that Gunn showed the investigators how he was tracking Drury. More on that later. During the interview, which took place almost 5 months after the AG's investigation began, Gunn became the first and only witness to allege Drury stole money. Aaron Jones's report noted that Gunn said that he knew Drury was stealing money from the honorary colonel's program. The main reason he thought Drury was stealing from the colonel program came from the sale of the Bearcat. He didn't have proof other than how Drury was acting in knowing that this money was given to the honorary colonels. During the interview, Gunn did not tell investigators that Drury had quit loaning money to Gunn's business, Metro Security, earlier that spring, having already put in $312,000 since the first of the year. That Drury had commissioned an audit of Gunn's books to find out why the company was bleeding so much red ink, and asked Gunn to meet with the auditor. That Gunn began flooding arson investigators with tracking information after Drury began going through Metro books. Before I go on to the next blunder with the Attorney General investigation, I want to address why conflicts of interest and abuse of power matter. Is there a criminal suspect's right to a disinterested prosecution? Are suspects entitled to a prosecution free from bias, one that precludes prosecutors from initiating and working on cases where they have conflicts of interest? The United States Supreme Court says yes. Prosecution by someone with conflicting loyalties calls into question the objectivity of those charged with bringing a defendant to judgment. It is a fundamental premise of our society that the state wield its formidable criminal enforcement powers in a rigorously disinterested fashion, for liberty itself may be at stake in such matters. Prosecutors have a fiduciary obligation to act in the public interest, not in furtherance of private interests, including their own. Prosecutors are said to have a duty to do justice, which requires, among other things, impartiality, neutrality, and especially disinterestedness. Retired Utah federal judge Paul Cassell, husband of prosecutor Patricia Cassell, who the Attorney General's office assigned to the Drury case, agrees. In a brief, Paul Cassell wrote that it should go without saying that public confidence in the disinterested conduct of a prosecutor is essential. The Attorney General's office did try to create the appearance of a disinterested Drury prosecution when it set up a Sean Reyes conflict screen. That's where one or more persons are walled off from any contact with an ongoing criminal case. But the Reyes conflict screen is bogus. The Reyes screen was set up in April of 2018. It reads in part, "The Utah Attorney General's Office, AGO, has a matter, Drury, that is currently the subject of a criminal investigation. Drury made in-kind donations to Attorney General Sean Reyes' 2016 campaign. Reyes believes that it would be inappropriate for him to have any control, authority, knowledge, or influence over the above-referenced investigation. It's an admission that Drury's connections with Reyes create a conflict that requires screening. But that admission falls way short of identifying the conflict between Reyes and Drury, as well as conflicts that other AGO employees have in connection with the AGHC and with the Drury investigation. Here are two problems with the Reyes screen. Reyes was screened 2 months after the investigation began. The horse had long left the barn. The disclosure of only a single in-kind donation as the basis for the screen vastly and deceptively understates the types and numbers of conflicts between Drury and Reyes. I listed them earlier. There are far more than a single in-kind donation. The screen did not wall off the many other members of Reyes' staff who were involved with the Attorney General honorary colonels, including Leo Lucy, Nate Mutter, Steve Sperry, and Aaron Jones, who continues as the main investigator even to this day. The next blunder, number 8, involves the transfer of the case to Summit County for prosecution. In late July 2018, the Drury case was transferred from the Attorney General's office to the Summit County Attorney's office for prosecution, a document that prosecutors refused to turn over, but Drury obtained from another source, describes the process. The initial investigation by the Attorney General's office was reviewed by 2 AG prosecutors. They recommended that the case be referred to another prosecuting entity to obviate any possible claim that Reyes was involved in any decisions regarding the case. In late July 2018, the case was referred to and accepted by the Summit County Attorney's Office. For reasons the AGO will not disclose, it bypassed Utah's 3 largest, most experienced county attorney offices for the tiny, relatively inexperienced Summit County Attorney's Office. The handoff, supposedly to avoid bias, occurred 5 months after the investigation began. It was almost completed by time the AGO decided someone else needed to prosecute. The case was assigned to Summit County Attorney Prosecutor Patricia Cassell, wife of another attorney who does work for the AGO, Paul Cassell. The AGO's conflicted and incompetent investigator, Aaron Jones, was transferred with the case. There was no review to check if Patricia Cassell herself or the investigator who she inherited had conflicts. Cassell did not know much about conflict screening. During a February 2020 hearing, Cassell tried explaining to the judge her refusal to provide conflict of interest information that Drury requested. She told the judge, "Records of any conflict checks? I don't think there is a record of a conflict check. We don't have a formal conflict check in the Summit County Attorney's Office." She went on to say, "Records showing violations of a screen? I don't know exactly what that is. I don't know that anyone in either of the attorney, as far as I know, have been screened off of this case." She did not even know that Attorney General Reyes himself had been walled off. Blunder 9 happened during the lead-up to Drury's first arrest, which occurred on September 14th, and the roles Rosie Rivera and Mike Gunn played prior to the arrest. Mike Gunn, using GPS devices hidden on Drury's vehicles, had been illegally tracking Drury on behalf of law enforcement. Several Salt Lake Honorary Colonel members who don't like Drury's policy on badges were vying at the time to replace him as president. Drury understood that getting a badge was one of the attractions for some men to join honorary colonel organizations. They would put the badges in their wallets next to their driver's licenses, so if pulled over, officers would see the badge when they asked for ID, sort of like a get-out-of-jail-free card. Drury told me that sadly many people joined to get the badge issued by the Unified Police Department to get out of tickets. Even after an honorary colonel secretly offered testimony against Drury, the colonel still wanted Drury's help getting a badge for his doctor, who Drury suspected wanted a badge to get out of tickets based on his long daily commute. I called him out on this, and that definitely added to his fury against me, Drury said. Again, prior to Drury's arrest, one of his rivals, John Cameron, seen here during his interview with investigators, set up an honorary colonel subgroup to support Rosie Rivera's 2018 election. Cameron sent out a flyer that urged support for Rivera. 4 days before his arrest, Drury scheduled a fundraiser for September 20th for Rosie Rivera's opponent for sheriff, Justin Hoyle. The day before a first arrest, Mike Gunn emailed Sheriff Rosie Rivera, making a false statement about Drury's alleged attempt to get, ostensibly steal, donation money. The email said, "Drury is no longer president or a colonel, but continues to act and speak for our organization, defaming the current board and employees of the Unified Police Department in attempts to mislead our members in order to receive donation money." It was likely not a coincidence that similar language appeared the next day in the documentation to support an arrest. I'll compare the wording in Gunn's 13 September Sheriff Rivera email to the language Attorney General Investigator Aaron Jones put in his probable cause statement, the one he used to get a judge to sign a warrant to arrest Drury. In the Gunn email, he continues to act and speak for our organization in order to receive donation money. In the probable cause statement, the defendant continues to speak and act on behalf of the Salt Lake Honorary Colonels Program in order to solicit money for the organization. It's a false statement double whammy, Gunn making a false statement to a law enforcement officer, Rivera, and Jones making a false statement to a judge. On September 14th, hours before Sheriff Rivera's deputies would arrest Drury, Gunn donated $1,000 to Rosie Rivera's campaign. Which leads us to the 10th blunder, that use of false information to justify a guns-drawn, hands-cuffed arrest instead of merely serving a summons on Drury to appear in court, plus Sheriff Rosie Rivera's and Mike Gunn's further involvement. The document used to charge Drury is called an information. It included Aaron Jones's probable cause statement. His false sworn statement was used to get an arrest warrant instead of getting a normal summons to appear. The normal procedure when someone is charged with a crime is for a judge to issue a summons for the defendant to appear in court. The rule reads, upon the acceptance of an information by a judge, the court shall issue a summons directing the defendant to appear for a hearing. The exception is when the court finds, from information provided by the prosecutor, that the defendant presents a risk to the community. Then an arrest is justified. The rule says a judge may issue a warrant of arrest instead of a summons if the court finds from the information that there is substantial danger of a breach of the peace, injury to persons or property, or danger to the community. It is not difficult to infer that Prosecutor Cassell, Investigator Jones, and Sheriff Rivera all knew they needed to convince a judge that Drury presented a sufficient danger to the public to justify an arrest, so they stuck false statements in the charging document. They claimed that the defendant continues to solicit money for the organization, and he attempted to access funds from the SLHC program from Wells Fargo Bank. They concluded an arrest warrant is necessary to protect the community. However, the Salt Lake Honorary Colonel account was already closed, so Drury had no access. Aaron Jones and Patricia Cassell would have known that. Prosecutor Cassell signed the criminal information. Aaron Jones swore the information was true. They lied. Sheriff Rivera's deputies arrested Drury in his company's parking lot as he left his office. This grainy photo shows an officer on the left holding a gun on a kneeling Drury on the right, hands behind his head. The photo is from a cell phone video shot by Mike Gunn, who was at the scene. He promptly posted the video online. KTVX, among other news outlets, covered the story. Here are a couple of segments from the television story wherein Gunn claims to have blown the whistle on Drury.
And News 4 Utah's Marcus Ortiz spoke exclusively with the whistleblower who notified authorities.
Drury's former business partner. He says he went to authorities because in both their line of work, it's all about credibility. But now, Drury is accused of stealing more than $300,000 from the Honorable Colonel's account.
I sent him an email saying, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Michael Gunn is a former business partner of Drury's, but he cut ties with him. Gunn is also a member of Honorable Colonels and went to authorities when things didn't seem right. His attorney says investigators failed to realize Drury was providing in-kind services for the money he allegedly took.
One of the things that he did for law enforcement was he ran Big Shot Ranch. And so he would allow law enforcement to go shoot guns and train at this shooting range.
But the Big Shot Ranch in Tooele County was destroyed in a fire last spring. A search warrant claims it was arson-related, and Gunn claims Drury is being targeted for the crime.
He's a bad dude, so there's a lot more to this than just the theft of the money.
Attorney General investigators probably should have subpoenaed Drury's records as part of their investigation prior to arrest. They did not. What's even more odd is that when they were at his office to make the arrest, they did not seize evidence they would need to prosecute alleged financial crimes. Deputies brought no search warrant for cell phones with texts and messages, office computers with Salt Lake Honorary Colonel and Attorney General Honorary Colonel records, emails, other books and records, receipts, and AGAC and SLHC board meeting minutes. After arrest, Drury was booked in Utah County Jail in Spanish Fork, 46 miles away, even though he lives in Sandy and was arrested by Salt Lake County officers. He was not told why. It was months before the prosecutor disclosed he was not booked in Salt Lake County Jail in order to avoid any conflicts of interest. What conflicts of interest? No one would explain. In any event, the same night he was arrested and booked, Drury posted bail, was released, and returned to his Sandy home. At 10:30 the night of Drury's arrest, Sheriff Rivera emailed AG Prosecutor Aaron Jones. She wrote, Drury was picked up, booked into Utah County Jail, and bonded out shortly after. What to do? Drury was already out of jail. Mike Gunn and Drury's former girlfriend, Drea Bowles, had a plan. Aaron Jones, Patricia Cassell, Rosie Rivera, and the court's presiding judge would quickly buy in. Which takes us to AG case blunder 11. Drury's second arrest on September 15th and an incarceration without bail for nearly 3 months. Arriving home the night he made bail, Drury called and exchanged texts with Drea Bowles, his ex-girlfriend, who was living in Florida with their son. The next morning, a Saturday, a Bowles email with Mike Gunn and Sheriff Rivera in the loop was forwarded to AGO investigator Aaron Jones. Drury had told Bowles he was out of jail. Her email said, "It clearly looks like I'm the one that set him up. I'm in fear for my life." She attached text messages she claimed Drury had sent. I'm about to show you the text messages Drea Bowles claims Michael Drury sent her. You can read the first two yourselves. The second one refers to Shani Harriet, Drury's girlfriend, who was with him when the text messages were exchanged. A third message reads, "You and Gunn made your moves. Brace yourself. Someone tipped the Salt Lake Tribune about the early Saturday morning developments, and the paper reported, prosecutors filed a motion on Saturday morning to revoke Drury's bail and have him returned to jail after he allegedly sent threatening text messages to a potential witness in the case. Drury allegedly said, "I know you were behind this. Get ready for payback, B... Prosecutors argued that, and the large cache of weapons Drury has access to because of his business, including a military minigun that can shoot thousands of rounds per minute, proved he was at risk to the community and should remain in jail without bail." A lot happened with lightning speed on that weekend morning. There are different versions of the text message flow. One is that it went from Bowles to Mike Gunn, to Aaron Jones, to Patricia Cassell, and then to presiding judge Mark Corris, who approved the arrest without bail. Another version is that the messages, while en route, went from Mike Gunn to Sheriff Rivera to Cassell, who then notified Aaron Jones to make an arrest after she got court approval. In any event, we know the sheriff was in the loop. Gunn emailed Rivera at 7:15 claiming that Drury had threatened him and Bowles via cell phone text messages. At 7:39, Sheriff Rivera responded to Gunn, saying she forwarded his accusation to Summit County Prosecutor Patricia Cassell. Taking a close-up look at the emails, Gunn wrote, "This morning, Drury threatened Drea and I via text message." She responded, "I forwarded this to the Summit DA. I will have a detective follow up with you as well." Sheriff Rivera forwarded the messages to Aaron Jones and then wrote, "I want to stay out of it as much as possible to avoid any conflicts." What? This from a person who assigned a detective to help Aaron Jones investigate Drury, who leaked information to her political ally Mike Gunn and helped set up his interview with the AGO, who 4 days after Drury publicly supported her political opponent, helped coordinate his first arrest, then assisted in the second arrest, and then coordinated his incarceration in another county and confinement in the hole without bail. Jailed again in Utah County and placed in what inmates call the hole, solitary confinement, Drury explains what it was like. "I was confined in a concrete cell without windows 23 3/4 hours a day. Bright white lights, no switch, from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. No bunk bed, instead a thin mat on a concrete floor. No desk, no stool, and no chair. I sat on the floor. No clock radio or television or access to communal areas. All visits were in handcuffs, waist and full ankle chains. No electronics allowed, even for working on my case. Limited phone calls to family or attorney, that for nearly 3 months." Following up Mike Gunn's interview with KTVX a few days earlier, Sheriff Rivera granted an interview with KUTV. Rivera said she assigned a detective to the investigation, directed by the Attorney General's office. She said she was aware of theft allegations against Drury months ago. She said the colonels donated money for the family of a fallen officer, but there's a question if all that money made it to his loved ones. She said, "It's my understanding that Mike Drury kept some of it for himself." Her comments were wholly inappropriate. Drury was not charged with stealing money meant to go to a widow of a fallen officer, but that false statement made him appear to be an extraordinarily heartless embezzler. Now to AG case number 12. The text messages used against Drury were fabricated. He did not send them. Evidence shows that the threatening text messages were fabricated by Drea Bolds in concert with Mike Gunn. Drury denies he sent them, but Drury's cell phone was not seized. Bolds and Gunn's cell phones were not taken into evidence. No cell phone records were subpoenaed. Aaron Jones, Sheriff Rivera, Prosecutor Cassell, and Judge Corus all took Bolds and Gunn's word for it. For the second time in 2 days, an arrest was made without seizing evidence that could prove or disprove the allegations. It was astoundingly bad police work. Jones and Cassell would not investigate the text messages they used to arrest Drury, but he did. He submitted his cell phone to a digital forensic lab for analysis. The expert's conclusion: he did not send the text page with the threatening texts used in Cassell's motion to revoke bail. Drury filed a motion to compel and preserve Drea Bolds' cell phone. It was in connection with a paternity suit. He had her cell phone analyzed. The expert concluded no data could be recovered. He said it looked like it had been run over by a truck. The device had been factory reset. She turned over a phone that had been smashed and its memory wiped clean. In an email response to questions posed by the expert, who wanted to know what happened to her cell phone, she admitted to what amounts to criminal evidence tampering. She wrote, "I go through phones pretty often because I'm always dropping them or my kid throws my phone." Then she wrote, "Yes, I did a factory set on my phone because I have personal photos of myself, private conversations, and photos of my 2-year-old. After Drury gave the court proof the text messages had been falsified, Aaron Jones interviewed Shani Harriet almost a year and a half after the second arrest. He reported that Shani said she did not know what the text said at the time. Shani stated that she later read the threatening texts from court information. Shani said she did not participate in the text. Because one of the text messages was attributed to Harriet, its additional testimony, the texts were fabricated. Drea Bolds' fear for her life would suddenly vanish. When Drury's bail was denied at an October 5, 2018 hearing, Bolds' attorney, Roger Houle, argued, without proof, that Drury was blaming his ex-girlfriend, Bolds, for being arrested. Houle said, "She needs to be protected, as does, I believe, Mr. Gunn, because Mr. Drury does follow through with his threats." Bail was denied, and Drury stayed in jail. But later, days after the hearing, Bolds' attorney, Roger Houle, sent a demand letter to Drury's attorney. It asked for Drury to pay Bolds $475,000. The next week, Houle emailed an offer to withdraw his opposition to Drury's release. He wrote if a settlement were reached, which included a $475,000 cash payment, her safety concerns would be satisfied, and she would not need to oppose his release. Drury considered that demand attempted extortion. Number 13. The second arrest was a false, illegal arrest. No probable cause statement, no signed judge's warrant, no evidence of threatening texts. Drury was not being rearrested for the alleged theft and breach of fiduciary duty crimes. He was arrested for a new, far more serious alleged crime that occurred after the first arrest. No probable cause statement was created or reviewed by the court before or after the arrest. Cassell only filed a motion to revoke bail. What is going on? Here's the motion. Cassell filed it online that Saturday morning. She signed it electronically. What's really odd that it bears the stamp of presiding judge Mark Korus, who must have been the on-call judge over the weekend. It has the date, 15 September, but it may have been backdated because it's signed in ink. It's truly bizarre. Judges don't sign motions, only the attorneys who file them. Judges sign orders that grant or deny motions. Yet Cassell's motion was signed by Judge Korus along with the notation, "Motion granted." Judge Hanson and the court's attorney blocked Drury's attempt to subpoena Judge Korus to get answers. At the same time, on September 15th, that Cassell filed the motion to revoke bail, she also filed a proposed order to revoke bail. That's what a judge would sign if he or she approved the motion. No judge ever signed that order, and in fact, 2 days later, a court clerk labeled it as not signed. In addition, there was no probable cause statement or arrest warrant to make that second arrest. It's clear the prosecutor and judge faked an arrest document. Prosecutor Cassell and Judge Korus somehow agreed to create the appearance that signing a motion, one likely even signed after the fact, was a valid arrest warrant. 14 on the AG blunder list. Drury was not permitted to attend his bail hearing where the circumstances of his arrest without bail were at issue. Plus, Mike Gunn lied on the stand at that hearing. Here's the transcript for the first of the hearing. The judge says, "Let's see. This is the State versus Michael Drury matter. The record should reflect that counsel are present. Mr. Drury is not." Then the judge asks Drury's attorney, Sims, "Tell me the status." Sims says, "Yes, I think we can address the issue without him being present." The court, "Thank you." Well, there you see the judge and even Drury's own attorney disregarding his right to be at a crucial hearing. Where was Drury? He remained in the hole. No one arranged for him to be transported from the Utah County Jail, 46 miles away, to Salt Lake for the hearing. He later told me, "Mike Gunn showed up to make more false statements to block my bail without me being there to defend myself." Gunn, under oath at the hearing, "I was quite disturbed when the arrest did finally happen." Gunn went on to say, one of the first things he did, referring to Drury, when he got out is he made threats directly towards me, which of course is not true. Blunder 14 is mostly about Mike Gunn, the state star witness, tracking, trespassing, and inflaming. Mike Gunn is the self-proclaimed Drury whistleblower, the prosecution's star witness, the only one to allege theft. He's also the self-proclaimed target for a Drury assault. And he engaged with the Attorney General's office and Prosecutor Cassell in illegal tracking. Earlier in this report, I showed this photo of Gunn during his interview with investigators, demonstrating how he was tracking Drury in real time, even during the interview, with a device hidden on Drury's truck. After that interview, he would continue tracking Drury illegally for several months, communicating that information to Aaron Jones, Prosecutor Cassell, and Sheriff Rivera. It's important to note that when Prosecutor Cassell first turned over video of Gunn's interview, as required by law, the segment with Gunn showing how he was tracking Drury was missing. It was only after Drury demanded the entire Gunn interview video that Cassell finally turned it over. It's among a long list of discovery violations she's committed. Investigator Jones, Prosecutor Cassell, and Gunn were obsessed with sending Drury back to jail. After almost 3 months in the hole, Drury was released on bail. One bail requirement was that he neither carry nor possess firearms. One purpose of Gunn's surveillance was to catch Drury with a firearm and give proof to the state's investigator Jones and Prosecutor Cassell to get Drury's bail revoked and send him back to jail. The tracking was illegal. Gunn was a licensed private investigator at the time, and it was legal for licensed PIs to use hidden tracking devices, but only for a legitimate business purpose. Gunn had no legitimate business purpose. Law enforcement agencies must show probable cause and get a warrant to use tracking devices. Utah law also prohibits law enforcement agencies from using any transmitted data from any device, ostensibly including guns, without a search warrant issued by a court upon probable cause. Over an extended period of time, months, the Attorney General's office, through Mike Gunn, conducted illegal surveillance and tracking of Michael Drury. Drury, after repeated attempts to get discovery from Prosecutor Cassell, finally obtained some of the text messages exchanged between Mike Gunn and AGO investigator Aaron Jones regarding the surveillance. Why is the text thread evidence significant? It documents Mike Gunn's illegally tracking the defendant for no legitimate business reason. It illuminates the state's obsessive attempts to put the defendant back in jail. It not only ties AG investigator Aaron Jones to the suspected illegal tracking, but it also connects Prosecutor Cassell, Attorney General Reyes, and Sheriff Rivera as well. Here's one of dozens of messages. Investigator Jones texted, "I believe he had a gun, and I was hoping we could put it together. However, we need to be able to prove it, and I think we would need both of those, person's testimony and clearer picture to prove it." Here Jones is referring to Gunn's operative, Aaron Person, who was tailing Drury using the tracking device and taking surreptitious photos. Gunn texted, "No point. Trish says I have to see the gun in Drury's hand first. I talked to her." He's referring to Patricia Cassell, who is also engaged. Sheriff Rosie Rivera's name gets frequent mentions in the tracking-related text messages. Examples: Rosie says she is waiting for you to call back. Rosie, I guess, had the wrong number for you. She will call you tomorrow morning. Rosie is helping. In September 2019, out of the blue, Prosecutor Cassell emailed Drury's attorney and attached one of the photos taken by Gunn's operative who had been tracking Drury. The photo had an arrow on it, pointing to something Drury was carrying in his hand while walking into a building. Cassell in the email wrote, "Michael Drury holding a gun. Looks like a Viper 9mm submachine gun." She went on to say, "Your client has been ordered not to possess any firearms, and I was sent this photo by a very zealous witness claiming that this is him. I think that all this gun stuff is a distraction from our case, but it is a violation of his release." A few days earlier, Gunn had sent that same photo to Aaron Jones. Gunn texted, "What I see clearly is a weapon, at least the shape of a weapon." The text included a photo of a Scorpion assault rifle. In truth, both Gunn and Rivera were seeing things. Drury was carrying a box, not an assault rifle. After getting the surreptitious photo, Drury searched his truck and found a hidden tracking device under it. Of course, Cassell knew who sent her the photo, but withheld that information. She rebuffed defendants' repeated attempts to learn who shot the photo and sent it to her. She did not investigate the apparent illegal tracking crime. She did not subpoena the concealed tracking device Drury found. Mike Gunn, from tracking to trespassing. Not to be limited to unlawful trafficking, Gunn, on September 22, 2019, drove into Drury's neighborhood, trespassed onto Drury's property, engaged in window peeking, and got caught on security cameras. And he was armed. In another court case, after seeing the trespass footage, 3rd District Court Judge Keith Kelly told the video, "Very disturbing," and that it showed Gunn misusing his position as a security guard. He wrote, "There certainly is evidence of respondent acting like a peeping Tom, looking through the window of petitioner's home, caught on camera, very strong evidence of that, and he committed acts of voyeurism." In March 2020, Gunn sent Aaron Jones an email that had a bunch of unhinged accusations. Among them, Drury was paying Salt Lake County District Attorney Sim Gill under the table. Former Salt Lake County Sheriff Jim Winder also paid Gill under the table. Drury was under surveillance by the FBI. Drury had an associate burn down Big Shot Ranch. Prosecutor Cassell's star witness, Mike Gunn, would be easily impeached at trial. His crazed accusations, his participation in the fake text messages that got Drury illegally arrested and incarcerated for almost 3 months in the hole, his lying about his life being endangered, his illegal tracking in concert with Aaron Jones, Patricia Cassell, and Sheriff Rivera, his extensive personal financial problems. Gunn was originally on the prosecutor's witness list, and then after Drury filed one pleading after another attacking Gunn's credibility, he was removed from the witness list. The Attorney General's case, 15th blunder, the prosecution tampered with evidence and withheld exculpatory evidence. I'll only take time to mention a few instances of the prosecution tampering with evidence and withholding evidence. 4 of the AGO Discovery audio-video interviews were significantly altered. 3 have had their opening Q&A sections deleted. 1 interview file is missing altogether. Prosecutor Cassell, despite numerous requests, has failed to provide the full interviews and has not credibly explained the missing sections. Another example, John Cameron's distorted Bearcat testimony. AG investigator Aaron Jones' written summary, which was turned over early in the case, said, "Cameron told us that Drury did not get approval for what the program funds were used for. The board did not approve what the funds were spent on." It's a false characterization. The actual testimony, Detective Darren Paul's question that we got months later from a withheld audio file. Paul asked, he would ask for board approval? Cameron's actual answer, yes, when the issue was forced, but yes, it did happen. After defendant Drury provided proof the board had approved the Bearcat money, AGO investigator Aaron Jones emailed board members John Cameron and another board member, Robert Clark, who owns the BMW of Murray dealership. In the email, Jones asked the board members about a $74,029 Bearcat expense. John and Robert, see attachment. The attachment is an email that was sent by Drury regarding the board setting up a meeting to obtain approval for reimbursement of funds from the honorary colonels for the Bearcat. Take a look at it. Let me know if you remember calling in and voting on this matter. Did the conference call happen? Do you remember what was approved on the 3 things Drury wanted to discuss? Let me know. If the $74,029 was approved, we want to take that amount off of the amount on our forensic accounting calculation. If you have any questions, please let me know. Focus again on what Jones told the board members. If the $74,029 was approved, we want to take that amount off the amount on our forensic accounting calculation. Both board members responded to Jones's inquiry. He included those responses in a supplemental report. He wrote, on March 17, 2020, both Cameron and Clark confirmed they participated in the May 20, 2016 telephonic board meeting. wherein there was a vote to approve the $74,029 transaction. Cameron told Jones he could not remember the specifics. Clark recalled the meeting and that the board authorized the funds. Despite those admissions, Cassell did not correct the criminal charges. Just when one might think this case cannot sink any lower, Prosecutor Cassell found a way to plumb new depths for the AGO's malicious prosecution. AG Case Blunder 16 is about her fake expert witness John Curtis and his sham expert report. Cassell engaged forensic accountant John Curtis to provide an expert opinion about Drury's alleged theft. Curtis testified against Drury at the preliminary hearing. He was supposed to prepare an expert report that must be shared with Drury. Here's what a forensic examiner is supposed to do: examine financial statements, examine books and records, examine tax filings, examine journals, ledgers, emails, memos, audit financial documents, looking for fraud, work alongside law enforcement investigators, seek out, interview key witnesses. Curtis did none of that. Curtis's purported forensic examination only looked at the nonprofits and Drury's personal and business Wells Fargo accounts. No other subpoenas, no grammar requests, no interviews. He did not look at any books or financial statements, did not look at either of the nonprofits' board minutes where financial transactions were discussed. He did not seek or examine emails exchanged between Drury and other board members. As the investigator on Drury's case, I interviewed John Curtis about his purported forensic examination. Next, I'll go through some of my Q&A with Curtis and add my commentary in blue typeface. I asked Curtis about his only looking at Wells Fargo bank account records. He said the bank records tell the story, and all of the transactions are there. My comment? All of the transactions are not there. Many other types of records show them. Curtis neither sought nor has seen those records. So I ask, have you seen the Colonel's organization's books and records? He said, I don't think they've been provided, and I don't think they obtained them through a search warrant. I don't think the defendant has to provide those. I'd like to get those if you have them. My comment, I did have access to the books and records. A forensic accountant should know whether a defendant has to turn over subpoenaed records. Drury not only offered to provide them to Curtis without a subpoena, but also meet with him as a witness and explain them. Curtis declined the offer. I asked, did you ever look at any of the minutes to see if the board authorized any transactions? He said, no, I have not seen those minutes. Did you ask for them, or did they offer them at all? I will definitely ask for them and get them, yes, if they exist. My commentary, it is simply mind-boggling that a forensic examiner looking into whether money had been embezzled from an organization that has directors who meet and approve stuff not only did not seek minutes, but did not know if they even exist. The minutes do exist. I asked Curtis, how certain are you that Drury committed fraud? He said, pretty high. I do not see authorization for the transfer of those funds. My comment, again, director authorizations are in board minutes, which Curtis had not seen, not in bank records. There are also other sources like director interviews, agendas, and emails. I asked, what if, hypothetically, Drury had paid out some money for something and wanted reimbursement? Because he controls the account, he just takes the money, basically pays himself back. So it never goes to buy a Ferrari or a trip to Hawaii. It just repays money he used on behalf of the honorary colonels. Curtis answered, that would certainly go in his favor. I mean, if you had evidence of that, maybe that would settle the case. I mean, I have not seen evidence of that. Again, my commentary, There is evidence of that. Curtis cannot see what he does not look for. And there's some breaking news involving John Curtis's testimony. In November this year, Drury filed a motion to have the state's investigator, Aaron Jones, and the state's expert, John Curtis, excluded as witnesses for a trial scheduled for May next year. Prosecutor Cassell did not oppose the motion. The motion is pending, but given the state's failure to oppose, it's more likely Curtis, as well as Aaron Jones, will not be testifying at trial. In the final section of this report, I'll go over Michael Drury's connections with Operation Underground Railroad. Drury was connected with OUR through his relationships with Sean Reyes, Paul Hutchinson, and Rad Barrett. All were close to Tim Ballard. He attended many OUR fundraisers, including events hosted by Paul Hutchinson and Sean Reyes. He met Ballard several times. He donated to OUR. And at one point, OUR wanted to purchase Big Shot Ranch to conduct training for child sex slave rescuers around the world. Paul Hutchinson was closely associated with Drury, Ballard, and Reyes. He's seen here firing a minigun during a Reyes fundraiser at Big Shot Ranch. He was a major OUR player. Hutchinson invested heavily in the yet-to-be-released feature film, Sound of Freedom. Ballard and Reyes wanted to extend the OUR concept worldwide and make Utah a hub for training operatives from around the world. That was one of Reyes's motives behind the Attorney General's office awarding a no-bid contract for a Vertra firearms training system installed at his College Park office building. In May 2018, 2 months after the BSR arson fire, an OUR delegation, including Rad Barrett, Dave Lopez, and others, visited Big Shot Ranch to discuss acquiring the facility. Drury was not interested. Here's what to watch for. Tooele County has reopened its Big Shot Ranch arson investigation. There are lots of suspects and potential motives. Among them, a Sean Reyes motive to have records of 4 fundraisers destroyed to cover up campaign donation violations. Another possible motive, to ruin Drury economically, resulting in a Big Shot Ranch fire sale, making it available, for example, to OUR with a much lower price tag. And, of course, a new investigation could put Mike Drury back on a long list of suspects. That's the end. Thanks for watching.